I'm Jade McNeil and welcome to the BEESPACE Podcast, your bi-weekly dose of business and property realness. No hype, no fluff, and definitely no BS. Just honest conversations about what it really takes to build something from nothing. Hello and welcome back to the BEESPACE Podcast. During this episode, I'm going to be talking about a subject which I am personally so incredibly passionate about. And that is really around the importance of design in HMOs and actually how I genuinely believe that, being conscious about design and following certain principles can have a positive impact and help to challenge the misconceptions of what HMOs are and actually what they can be in the marketplace. So I think that's a pretty good place to start. So if you're kind of, similar to me and you've been in the property industry for a while, then you're really probably kind of almost second nature like HMOs. Yeah, it's just, what people do, I understand them, so on and so forth. But if you're not, and you're coming across them for the first time, you might have how I had in the early days when somebody first told me about HMO, kind of feelings of, I think like when you don't know about them and what they are and how to create them and, the good purpose that they can achieve, they can seem like quite scary, daunting things to create, to operate. And I think a big part of that is because of the absolutely awful reputation they have. Most people, when people ask me what I do, maybe this is a better way to describe it. They ask me what I do, I say, I do property development. Oh, what type? Oh, student accommodation. Yeah, okay, they understand that. So they understand, a group of students living together in a building or a house or whatever. And that makes sense. However, when I show them what I produce, their minds are literally blown. They're like, what? I never lived in that when I was a student. This is insane. Like I lived in what most 99.9% of people's perceptions of HMOs are. I lived in damp, mold-ridden, squashed, poorly maintained, overpriced, cold, drafty house with some mates. I think that is very much how kind of people see HMOs, houses of multiple occupancy. That's how they're seen in this day and age. And there's a good reason for that. But I actually think, one of the core ways that we can help make positive change and change that misconception is by really utilizing design and being really conscious about, the buildings that we create and how we kind of bring them together and, how they flow, how they function and what environment they can facilitate for somebody to actually live in. I think historically as well, HMOs may have been seen as kind of like a low entry point into the market. That's the only option that somebody could potentially afford in the rental sector. When actually now, I think what they facilitate more than ever is the ability to be with others and connect and create relationships and community, if they are designed with that in mind as a kind of objective of the building to be able to facilitate that for the tenants. So I think, where, the HMOs are and the importance of them in our marketplace is huge now more than ever. And, has having the consciousness to see the importance of them, is really paramount. And I'm not just talking about going into old properties and throwing a bit of paint around. I am talking about, design, actual kind of consciousness about layouts and choices and form and function. When I'm designing one of my buildings, one of my HMOs, my number one priority is to always look at the communal space and make sure that is absolutely maxed out as much as possible, because that space needs to be able to do multiple jobs for multiple people. We're asking a lot of the space all at one time, so it needs to always be a priority. And fundamentally, when it comes to communal space, if we don't give our tenants the space to all come together, to all sit together, to be able to cook together, chill together, work together, whatever that function may be, if we don't actually deliver that in terms of, the amount of space that's given, kind of where furniture's positioned, where lighting's positioned, if we don't deliver that, then that won't happen. So therefore, the communal space is like my number one priority in all of my designs. And also, like when I'm budgeting for, a project, and it's like making sure that, first of all of the essential items are within the budget, but any kind of nice to haves, additional feature areas, as I refer to them as, nice wall coverings and, speccing up on lighting and additional accessories, things like that, things that really create impact and environment. I will always prioritize that going into communal spaces, because that's where that money is going to have the biggest return on investment in terms of encouraging community and connection and people coming together. Unfortunately, though, not everybody sees it quite as I do even now. Even, people that are experienced within the HMO game, I still see products coming through where, we'll take a house as a normal example. Like somebody can run the space calculations and say, oh, yeah, I can get, 7 or 8 bedrooms into here. What that means is that I'm going to have to sacrifice, over half of my communal space. That's all right, because it still meets what is requested in terms of amenity standards. So that's like what your council, governing bodies expect you to have for the amount of people that you're licensed, that you're allowed to have living in the building. Well, it still meets the requirement. And what that could actually wash out to is that you've got, 7 people cramped into a small kitchen with a table that, the TV's kind of above it, and there's nowhere for them to maybe for 2 or 3 people to sit, but not for like all 7 to sit together. And yeah, it is less than ideal. And what that, a lot of developers do is that they'll kind of look at that and go, yeah, but I can get that, 7th or 8th bedroom in, and it's going to increase the end valuation of my building. And to a degree, yes, it does, but that's short term. Long term, from my own experiences in the way I've approached my own portfolio, building out and prioritizing communal space over the amount of rooms you can get in, does 2 things. It, inevitably means that you are probably going to be able to increase on rents, because you've got less people in there, there's more space available, your rooms are, not squashed. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that people tend to hang around for a lot longer. So therefore, your churn on voids, for example, if you're in the professional side of HMOs and not the student side, your churn on voids is minimized right down. And in any HMO business, any operational HMO business, it's all about voids. You want to keep that as low as possible, because that just eats into profitability at the end. And I genuinely, sincerely believe that, I know from my own portfolio, encouraging that communal space and facilitating people to be able to come together as a priority is a must. And not just going, yeah, but I can slice the space up, get more bedrooms in, cram more people in. It's short term. That is really, really short term. Like long term, our priority is always to create the infrastructure of a building that can facilitate community. That's top priority for us. Another priority right at the top of the list for me when I'm creating my HMOs in terms of design and layout is to really think about that bathroom ratio. So making sure that we're not just meeting amenity standards, that we're actually, thinking above and beyond that, and actually thinking about what we're creating for people to live in together that works as a group. Because like I said before, we are asking a very lot of the space, so we want to make sure that it can do all the things we need it to do for, people at different times of the day. So really having those bathroom ratio in there are so important. When I'm kind of looking at the bedrooms in HMOs, I'm really thinking about the way the layouts kind of operate and flow from the minute that door opens. So, very conscious about, what I see from the moment the door opens in terms of creating that design-led experience. So maybe think about if you walk into a nice hotel and you open the door, boom, what do you see? You see the money shot. So I'm really conscious about that because, when somebody comes home from work, you want them to walk into the room and think, yeah, I feel good here. This is a space I'm happy in. So that's a priority to me for sure. And also thinking about the function of a space. So, when someone's in there, they're using it, they're working, they're getting ready, they're getting changed, do I have light switches and plug sockets in the right way? Can I open doors correctly en suites? Can I pull my chair out? Can I get around my bed? And just making sure that, we are absolutely delivering on that space, and where we can add in additional circulation space through layout. So thinking about where beds are positioned and making sure there's enough room to kind of maneuver around and not feel cramped and squashed. There's so much to be said about, designing for well-being and mental health. It's so true. It's not a topic that I'm necessarily going to deep dive into on this particular episode, but, we all know, don't we? We all feed off our environments when we're at home. For me personally, if I'm at home and I'm surrounded by mess and clutter, that does nothing for me. That just makes my brain feel oh God, I can't focus. I've got to get rid of this. It's not great for my energy. So, that's my kind of personal experience. I'm sure for you, there'll be things that you resonate with and think, yeah, God, I need to have that in order for me to kind of focus. So I bring that thought process into my HMOs and into the design as well. Look, I want you to be able to do all the things you want to do within this space and feel at ease and like it's been well thought of for you. And again, that just plays into that tenant experience and, really delivering on conscious design choices. One of my own kind of brand values in BEESPACE is that, I really want people to feel like when they step into one of my buildings, they've stepped into Pinterest, and that they can have a piece of that. And, they can have a piece of that because they can afford it if they share with others. And I think that's kind of, that approach has really, really worked for me, because, my buildings are very, very design-led in terms of the way they look and the way that they function. They're aspirational, so people will come in and be like, wow, that's amazing. I really want this. What that kind of washes out to, what I'm getting at, is that it makes you feel good, as in the person that's living there. So that is good for kind of, their mindset, as it were, and their energy, is that they can live in that aspirational setting that they can afford right now for that stage in their life. And I'm actually really proud to be able to deliver that for, my tenants and my students. It's a really important driver to me. Another important kind of aspect of the design for me, which I think a lot of people overlook or necessarily don't understand the value of, is when I am thinking from a function perspective about lighting. Lighting, the way I approach it when I'm thinking about my designs is I'm right, okay, what needs to happen within this space? How is it going to be used? So, for example, is somebody cooking? Is somebody working? Is somebody socializing? Is somebody relaxing? Whatever the, anticipated activity is going to be, and then that's how I design my lighting. So whether that's, we need stronger lighting over kitchen cabinets, for example, track lighting, strip lighting, whatever that might be. And then, we tend to look at wall lights in, around sofa areas, so the lighting can be turned down in the evening. Thinking about what the type of lighting that goes over desks in bedrooms, whether that's plug-in lights or over the desk, but making sure the wattage is lower. Just being very, very conscious about kind of what's somebody actually going to do in this space, and then designing the lighting out from there. And it's not, you'll probably hear me say this and be like, that makes so much sense. Why did I not think about that before? But literally do it. So next time you're looking at a set of floor plans, and it's not just for HMO, it's for anything, right? This is just basic design principles. Look at the lighting and think, okay, how is somebody going to be in this space? and kind of take it from there, and that will really feed into like function and flow within one of your buildings. I'm just going to jump in and interrupt this episode because I have a really exciting announcement that I can't wait to share with you all. The doors are now open to be able to join my Redesigning the Property Industry mentoring program. I've been running my program since 2020, and I am so proud to say that in that time I've supported and helped some seriously impressive people to start, grow and scale some of the best property businesses out there. If you're sat there and you're thinking, do you know, I would love to give property a go, but I just don't know where to start. Or you sat there and thinking, okay, I've started, but I'm really unsure about direction and where to go next. I absolutely hear you. Spaces to work with me are always very, very limited. The programme starts in July 2024. As part of the programme, you'll get to spend some one-to-one time with me monthly. You'll also become part of a very small and intimate group of people that are at a similar stage to you that can really help support, inspire and keep you on track and accountable. Every day you'll have access to me in your pocket, on Slack, in DMs and voice notes. If this sounds like something you might be interested in, then please don't hang about. Head to the link below, give the information a read, or drop me a DM on Insta, 3_BEESPACE. Let's do this. Let's build the property portfolio that you've always dreamed of together. I can be there to help and support you, guide you with all of my years' experience. So now let's get back to the episode. For me, you know, the reason why I'm kind of having this discussion today on the pod is that I think a lot of the time people kind of see things on Instagram and they think, oh, they're just doing that just for Instagram, just to get the likes and the clicks, whatever. And it's just really kind of easy to kind of just throw some paint in, put some cushions and plants in, and voila, sorted. No, not the case. Not, you know, there's a lot of effort and thought and kind of approach that goes into creating the designs. And again, you might be thinking, what's the point? I mean, you know, I'll just loop back around to the start of the pod where it's very much thinking about kind of even now where HMOs sit in the market and the way that they're perceived by people, like this terrible thing, and, you know, all of the antisocial connections that you have to HMOs. I mean, don't get me wrong, they exist, right? They absolutely do. They do in any part of the housing sector, but I think historically more connected to HMOs. The reason, you know, a big part of why that is the way it is that those buildings are probably owned by people, landlords, that are pretty shitty. And they don't put the human first, and they don't maintain their buildings, you know, which is so important. It's so important. And actually a big part of how we do change that perception is by like maintaining the actual buildings, because it's what the world sees of the properties that we own. If we don't look after them inside and outside, then that's what we're kind of judged on. But ultimately, like what I've seen over the years through other people's kind of experiences looking at their portfolios is like, it's basic. Like if you give somebody a really rubbish product, they're probably not going to look after it, are they? Because they don't feel, you know, considered or seen. And generally that, you know, property just doesn't get looked after. And that's because, you know, it's a two-way street as being a property owner and having tenants. Like you've got to deliver on your half. And it's really important. And historically, when landlords have not done that, this is where all the negative kind of connotations around HMOs have come from. You know, in antisocial behaviour and causing problems in the community. Like, totally get it. But yeah, you know, that's why I sincerely believe that design and being conscious about design and design choices to create a better product for people to live in, ultimately that's what I'm talking about, plays a part in making a positive impact and change in the misconception about HMOs and kind of improving it as we move forward. If you're currently actively investing in HMOs, when I kind of go over this next point, this will resonate with you. But in in the past, we've had a few different scenarios where we've been kind of mid-construction of a house and turning it into a HMO. And when we've gone to put the ensuite stud wall up in what would be bedroom 1 on the ground floor, and the neighbours have been able to see into the house, they've really not been happy. They're like, is this going to be a HMO? Because obviously, I'll keep this short and sweet, but when you're investing outside of Article 4, you can create a 6-bed HMO under permitted development. So basically there's no planning required. So you can just do it. So we've gone and done that on previously in previous years on our non-Article 4 stock. And neighbours have come around literally banging on the doors like, what is going on here? I literally had someone say to us once, you're going to be moving in drug dealers and prostitutes and you're going to ruin the street. And yeah. So in that scenario, we know our history and we know that that's absolutely not going to happen. We would never have that. We would never do that anyway. But I mean, like from a moral perspective, we wouldn't. But, in that scenario, that is a classic of, the outer world's opinion of HMOs and kind of the type of people that frequent in them. Anyway, this particular house I'm referring to, we spent time kind of, working with the neighbours on both sides, and semi-detached properties, and so the adjoining side, and kind of letting them come in and see the building meters and, showing previous work and the website and stuff like that, and kind of, the type of tenants we were going to attract and so on and so forth. And actually, like, hand on heart, they've all been brilliant. And the churn in that particular house, and it's B5, if you want to go and look on my website, has been like really, really low. We've only lost one or two tenants over the years, and I think we finished that in 2020, so it's like 4 years. Yes, I think we've maybe lost 2 tenants in that time, and they've been replaced. And they've built brilliant relationships with the neighbours next door. And, that just kind of busts the myth, doesn't it, of who these terrible people that are going to be moving next door. But it does take for us, as good folk doing the HMOs, we do have to put a lot of work in terms of like building the relationships in the community and engaging with neighbours and so on and so forth to make them feel content that we are creating a product, with the best intentions and that we're going to maintain. Because, as well as, spending the time building the relationship with potential tenants and tenants that are in your buildings, you really need to be conscious about the wider community. And that's actually a big part why I decided to have my own in-house lettings operator, to have Eli, because I know that he can, be that face of the brand and make those connections and answer those questions and start to build those relationships. And that's proven, both on the tenant side and also on the community side as well. And that has proved to be, really, really important over the years. And it's definitely something that I would encourage anybody to consider when, if you're thinking about building a sizable portfolio over the coming years. It's definitely something that's going to, issues within the community is definitely going to come to you, because unfortunately these misconceptions do exist, and it's kind of our job, those of us that want to do it properly for the right reasons, to kind of get out there and bang that drum, be led by design and integrity and do it right. And a lot of people that kind of come and work with me that are my mentees that I help build their property portfolios with, they come to me fundamentally because they connect on the moral compass the same way that I do. They don't want to be shoehorned into a box of, as I mentioned before, kind of get as many people in as you can. They want to ethically create a product that feels right to them, that is delivering on all of the, the important factors that I've mentioned. And yeah, I think, even for myself stepping into the industry, HMO industry in 2016, 17, it's just very different narrative. It was like, there's no need for design, best case, you're going to get white walls and some white IKEA mound packs. And obviously if you've listened to my story, like episode 1, that is just kind of was never going to be my approach. I was always going to do things the way that I felt it should be done. And actually that just felt right to me at the time because of how I acknowledged and saw the power of design within retail, which is where I'm from originally, in corporate. But as the years have gone on and I've built my portfolio up and I've got more and more tenants and different scenarios and things have arisen, and we look at results and forecasting and, you know, and voids and all that jazz, like actually like 100% having the approach I have has worked. Like without a shadow of a doubt, it's probably increased my rents by up to 30% within the market, which is huge. And also, you know, it's lowered that tenant churn on the professional side, which is obviously better for your bottom line. So that's definitely improved on that, and supports the management business in terms of it being, you know, most of the time, you know, not as problematic. So as I kind of look back with experience, being led by design is the way forward. I do think, you know, as I mentioned before, I think on Instagram, it gives you a little bit of a skewed vision. And we think everybody is just out there, just producing these incredible HMOs that are design-led and, you know, very conscious choices and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, that is just not reality still. The reality is, and you'll know yourself if you're right at the start and you're starting to have a play on spare room and look in your local area, or even if you're, you know, you're like me and you're really experienced. Whenever I go into spare room with a mentee to kind of look at competition, it blows my mind how bad it is still. Like, we've not come a long way. We have when we look at Instagram, and we're very polarized with that view, and we think, wow. And don't get me wrong, like everyone that's on there in terms of what I see on Instagram, like my goodness, it's improved over the past 8 years, and people are seeing it as like such an important thing within their portfolio building. But the reality of it is that it's just not touching the sides of how bad standards are out there. So, you know, it's going to take a while to change perceptions of what HMOs are. But, you know, we have the power to do that, don't we? You do. If you're listening to this and you've got HMOs, you've got an interest in them, and you kind of ponder the things that I've discussed on the pod today, like that will have a positive impact. And then tell your other developer mates about it, about your results. And let me tell you, what they'll do is they will improve on kind of their own standards. And you know what? Over a long period of time, we just might see a positive uplift. And that's kind of like one of my drivers, I guess, with what I'm doing with BEESPACE, is that ripple effect. So, you know, I do my thing from the angle of everything I've discussed on the pod today, and then I support and train other people to be able to facilitate that within their own property businesses. And then that has a positive effect within their local areas, and then so on and so forth. And then it just helps raise standards. And if we can raise standards, we can challenge, you know, those misconceptions and get people to see them as a positive thing within the housing market. Because the way things are going in terms of, like, you know, cost of living and interest rates and all the fun stuff, like, we're going to need more HMOs because that is affordable living, you know. So I think the more people that consciously make better choices of design, and I'm not just talking about picking the paint colours and the nice cushions, I'm talking about, you know, I'll run over it again, like really focusing and prioritising communal space, because we want to create an opportunity for connection and community, you know, and seeing that as like the star on top of the tree, and not just going, oh, I can cram more people in, my Excel spreadsheet says yes. But we're extracting the human element out of that when we make that choice. So it's really important to prioritise communal space. And thinking about building those relationships, you know, yes, with your tenants, obviously you must do that, but also with your wider community, so you can be accessible to answer any questions and kind of, you know, start to change the narrative. And just really in general thinking about the space and what you're creating and how is it going to be used, and how realistically are you expecting 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people to all live and function in there and how it kind of flows and operates. Like, be really conscious about that, because ultimately when you will create a better product and you'll inspire others to create a better product. So yeah, that's kind of like high level when I'm thinking about like using design to create a positive change for HMOs. That's kind of where I'm at. So I really hope you've enjoyed this thought process of mine today. If you would like to talk more to me about supporting you to be able to create your HMO portfolio and your designs, then reach out to me. Drop me a DM on Instagram. It's 3_BEESPACE. I've said it before and you'll hear me say it again, like, it's an absolute massive privilege to do the job that we are able to do by acquiring these buildings and designing them. So guys, listen, just do the best job that you can. If you need some support, reach out to me and let's have a chat. And yeah, you just never know who you might go on and inspire. That's a wrap for another episode of the BEESPACE Podcast. I've been your host, Jade McNeil, property developer, mentor, and business coach. Don't forget to subscribe on your favourite platforms. And until next time, remember, don't believe the hype and always keep it real.